Hey everyone, and welcome back to this explainer. Today we're diving into a concept that's deeply profound and honestly kind of counterintuitive. Right from the get-go, looking all the way back to Genesis, there's this deeply ingrained, fundamental human desire in every single one of us. We literally want to be the ultimate king of our own lives. We want to call the shots, define good and evil on our own terms, and completely control the outcome of our stories. But what happens when that relentless pursuit of control is exactly the thing destroying us? Today, we're going to unpack an incredible secret. We're going to see how true, life-altering grace is usually found not when we're winning, but when we're broken. There's this beautifully poignant lyric that really captures the heart of what we're talking about today. I built my own kingdom, a throne of my own design. It hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? It perfectly captures that core conflict of human pride. We spend our entire days laying foundations, building up these little personal empires, and totally convincing ourselves that we're completely self-reliant. But the harsh reality? Those foundations are almost always built on shifting sand. We think we're building an impenetrable fortress, but we're really just building a trap of our own design.
So let's look at part one, the world where I am king.
Okay, so here's the fundamental problem we all face. We are constantly trying to build these kingdoms on that shifting sand I just mentioned. We want our world our way. But, and here's the critical pivot, God actually loves us too much to just stand by and watch our fragile little kingdoms crush us. Which brings us to a really startling concept, breaking the legs. To save us from ourselves, God sometimes has to intervene in a way that feels, well, incredibly painful. Now, I want to be very clear. This isn't about some cruel, vindictive punishment, not at all. As Hosea 6:1 points out, this is a divine, necessary intervention. It's the loving act of breaking our pride to prevent our ultimate spiritual self-destruction. By stripping away our ability to stand solely on our own 2 feet, we're practically forced into a place of true reliance on Him. Moving on to Section 2, Jacob and Modern Achievement. Let's think about active pride for a second. Think about the biblical figure of Jacob. He's wrestling all night long, absolutely refusing to surrender because he wants to secure his blessing by his own sheer force of will. Now, think about the modern equivalent. It's the burned-out professional, right? Today, we hustle, we grind, we literally exhaust ourselves trying to secure our own futures. We fight against everyone and everything, just like Jacob did. And what happens? We end up completely depleted by our own relentless ambition. It's exhausting just thinking about it. But here's the crucial turning point. How does that epic wrestling match actually end? As dawn approaches, Jacob's hip is physically struck. It's broken. He can't stand. He can't fight anymore. But right there, right in the middle of his brokenness, God gives him a brand new name, Israel. That shattered hip at dawn, it wasn't a defeat at all. It was actually his ultimate victory. His name goes from Jacob, which represented a whole life of relying on his own deception and strength, to Israel, representing someone who struggles with God but now has absolutely no choice but to lean entirely on Him. His physical crippling forced his complete surrender to grace. Which brings us to Section 3, Mephibosheth and Unexpected Loss. So if Jacob represents active pride, this story represents passive tragedy. Think about 5-year-old Mephibosheth. This poor kid did absolutely nothing wrong, but in a moment of sheer panic, his fleeing nurse drops him and he is left permanently crippled. And man, doesn't that resonate with the uncontrollable life crises we see today? The sudden health diagnosis that comes out of nowhere, the unexpected job loss, the relationship that shatters without any warning. Just like Mephibosheth, we so often find ourselves broken by circumstances that are completely, 100% outside of our control. But I want you to notice the incredible transformation in his identity. Mephibosheth was the grandson of King Saul, right? His original name was Merabiel. But through this immense, tragic loss, which physically broke the pride of his grandfather's royal dynasty, his name shifts to Mephibosheth. And that means destroyer of shame. Even in the absolute darkest depths of a passive tragedy that left him completely helpless, God was actively working behind the scenes to remove the ultimate shame of pride. And where this story eventually leads is absolutely beautiful. 2 Samuel 9:13 tells us that Mephibosheth lived in Jerusalem and always ate at King David's table. Always. Even though he was crippled in both feet. In fact, you could argue it was precisely because he was broken, because he had nothing left of his grandfather's proud dynasty to offer, that he was invited to the king's table in the first place. His crippled feet led him directly into the deepest, most intimate experience of the king's grace. How amazing is that?
Now, let's look at section 4, the grace of grafting through brokenness.
When you dig into the source texts, like Romans 11 and John 15, they outline a really clear sequential journey. It's like a spiritual roadmap. It starts with step 1, pride. That's us, acting like wildly independent branches, trying to survive all on our own. Then comes step 2, brokenness, or pruning. We have to be broken off from our own self-reliance. And why? So we can reach step 3, grafting. This is where we are grafted into the true vine, Jesus Christ. And it's only through that painful breaking sequence that we arrive at step 4, true life. We literally cannot produce fruit on our own. We have to be broken off from our old dying roots to be joined to his living ones. But here is the most breathtaking irony in all of this. John 19:36 says of Jesus on the cross, "Not one of his bones will be broken." Think about that. While our legs have to be spiritually broken to save us from our own pride, Jesus, the perfectly innocent, completely unbroken lamb, took all of our punishment. He took our pain, our spiritual tearing, entirely upon himself. He endured the cross whole and unbroken in his divinity so that we, in our deep brokenness, could be seamlessly grafted into his eternal life. It's just, wow.
Let's head into our final section, limping toward the throne.
The words of Jesus in Matthew 18:8 are just piercingly direct. He says, "It is better for you to enter life maimed or crippled than to have 2 hands or 2 feet and be thrown into eternal fire." I really want you to feel the immense weight of that statement. Being physically, emotionally, or professionally unbroken in this life, it is entirely worthless if it keeps us separated from God. If our strength and our pride are actually the very things leading us away from grace, then losing them is literally the greatest rescue mission we could ever experience. Let's bring it back to that poetic motif from the song lyrics we looked at earlier. I'd rather enter crippled, leaning on you, than stand tall on my own and lose the way. That right there perfectly sums up the emotional heartbeat of this whole explainer. When you finally grasp the true danger of standing tall on your own shifting sand, you actually begin to welcome the limp. You really do. Every limping step becomes this beautiful offering of praise, a physical, tangible reminder that you are sustained not by your own sheer willpower, but by his amazing grace. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a really provocative question. Is your wound and brokenness the end or the beginning of grace? Whatever tragedy, whatever burnout or shattered pride you might be experiencing right now, whether it's an active wrestling like Jacob's hip or a passive tragedy like Mephibosheth's fall, it is not your destruction. I want to challenge you today to fundamentally reframe your failures and those uncontrollable crises. What if that very wound is exactly where your self-reliance finally ends and God's sustaining grace truly begins? Thank you so much for joining me today, and I really hope this changes how you view your own journey toward the throne.